This video, we are going to look at the cranial nerves on complete anatomy. Then I'm going to send you to some web pages where you will look at them on models, and you will then do mouse over models. So I've added nervous system layer 1. That's all we need for the cranial nerves. And we want the head and neck. So we're going to go to models, head and neck. So we want to zoom in on the skull. So I'm going to zoom in and slide it down. Now, if you really want to feel therapeutic, you can use the cut tool to remove the skeleton. Ta-da! And that's going to take you some time. Or you can just cheat and get rid of the skeletal system by clicking remove skeletal system. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. So it's up to you. Do you want to be therapeutic and cut away the skull? It'll take you probably 5 minutes. Or do you want to just do the hide the bones? I chose hide the bones. So we are going to look at the cranial nerves, which are the nerves coming off of the skull. You can actually see some of the facial nerve right there. There's my facial nerve, and my favorite nerve right there is coming out. That's the facial nerve. And we can actually see some of the cervical plexus right here, which is in a different video. We can see the brachial plexus, but we care about the cranial nerves. So we're going to zoom in more on the brain. Isn't that creepy? Now, unfortunately, it will not let me remove the eyes, but let's begin looking at the cranial nerves. So there are 12 cranial nerves. They start at number 1, which is the most rostral. This is number 1, the olfactory nerve. And they move caudally, that's towards the back, and inferiorly. So number 12 is down here, which is the hypoglossal. And here is the hypoglossal nerve. So we're going to look at them. So what I want you to do in this video is you are going to tag them. And I'm going to go through them. I'm not going to tag them all just because I don't want 50 billion tags out here. So cranial nerve number 1, I'll tag this one I guess, is the olfactory right there. So there's cranial nerve number 1. And again, you can move the tags around when you do them. So this nerve is actually right above the ethmoid bone right there. So those little tiny dangling appendages are going through the olfactory foramina. And if I put on the nose and twist it a little bit, see, you could sort of see them coming through the ethmoid bone right there on either side of the perpendicular plate. So this tagged the olfactory bulb. This is the bulb. This is the tract, and it's going there. And notice it's called the olfactory tract. This is actually the more correct term for this. It's in the central nervous system. It's covered by dura mater. This is the olfactory tract. Now, cranial nerve number 2 is coming from the eyeballs, right there. And if I wanted to tag it, I would go like that, tag it. That is the optic nerve. Now, technically, this is still in the central nervous system. However, because of terminology and when they're looking at, they're like, oh, it comes off the brain, it has to be a nerve. So the optic nerve comes here. And this structure we looked at in previous parts is the optic chiasm. And that is where signals from this eye cross over to this side, and this eye cross over to this side. So that's the optic chiasm. So it's up to you. Do you want to mark it or not? I will ask it on the cranial nerve brains. So this is our next structure right here. On that, that is the optic tract. They're like, okay, it's in the brain now. We're going to call it a tract. And it's going into the thalamus back here. So olfactory, optic. The third one is called the oculomotor. So there's the mammillary bodies, aren't they cute? There's the pituitary, it's cute too, I guess. Olfactory, optic, oculomotor. So let's zoom out a little bit now. Too far. So here's the oculomotor exiting out, and it's going to actually have several branches. It is going to go to the muscles of the eye. It goes to most of these extrinsic muscles. It is actually going to go to the iris. It causes constriction of the iris. So it's a very busy nerve, this oculomotor nerve. And notice I put on the dura mater here. So part of the optic nerve is covered in dura mater. The olfactory nerve is definitely covered in dura mater. So cranial nerve number 1, olfactory, 2, optic, 3, oculomotor. Okay, we're gonna go on a treasure hunt now. So these 3 are coming off the anterior surface of the frontal lobe, anterior surface of the thalamus, anterior surface of the midbrain. Our first pons one is right there. And that is that's the trochlear nerve. Now it's not coming from the front, it's coming from the back. Now, unfortunately, it's not letting me cut this lobe right here, but we can see, it's the purple thing. It is coming here. It's going to the back of the midbrain, or the mesencephalon, right there. So that's the trochlear nerve. And it's going to go to this muscle called the superior rectus muscle. That is going to be up here. And we'll talk about that muscle when we get to the special senses in the eye. So, cranial nerves, olfactory, optic, oculomotor. They're getting smaller, aren't they? And where's our hiding one? See, I can't find it either. There it is. The oculomotor. Okay, good news. The next one is huge. And this is my second favorite cranial nerve because it's so well named. It is right here. It's coming off of the pons. Again, the anterior surface. The trochlear is the only special one that comes off the posterior. And it has a ganglia. Ganglia are cell bodies outside the central nervous system. And it splits into 1, 2, 3 branches. What's 3? Tri. So it's called the trigeminal nerve. So, and I like it on this model because I guess this is a picture because you could see all 3 branches of it. Our brain model, it's just this pathetic thing sticking off the pons. I'm like, that's the trigeminal. On a couple of other models we have these humongous things sticking out. So that's the trigeminal nerve. And the trigeminal nerve, we're not going to worry about the terminal branches. If I want to see the terminal branches, I have to look at all this other mess. So I'm just going to stop it at that. So we have olfactory, optic, oculomotor, our hiding trochlear, trigeminal. So that's our next nerve. That is the abducens nerve. It is coming off right there. It's on the anterior part and the inferior part of the pons. And it's called the trochlear nerve. And it goes to this side of the eye, the abducens nerve. And what does abducens look like? Abduct. It goes to this muscle called the lateral rectus that abducts the eye. It makes you look to the outside. So, all right, nerves again. Olfactory, optic, oculomotor. Wow, I got it. Trochlear, trigeminal, abducens. Okay, our next couple nerves are going to be a little bit confusing, and students confuse them. So see how this is 3 big branches off the middle of the pons? That's the trigeminal. We then have this mess right here coming off. Now, they're a lot smaller. So this mess right here is actually only 2 nerves. It is the facial nerve. It is the vestibulocochlear nerve. Right there. So this confusing thing right there in the middle that people think is the 3rd branch of the trigeminal is actually part of the facial nerve. It's called the intermediate nerve. So again, the trigeminal nerve is this humongous thing with 3 big branches. Then we get down here. We have the facial nerve with its branch right there. And we have the vestibulocochlear nerve. So we're going to pretend that intermediate nerve does not exist, okay? Just to make your lives easier. So, facial nerve is the next nerve. It is coming off the junction right here. And it is going to actually go out through the styloid mastoid foramen. Oops, let's zoom out. It's going out through the stylomastoid foramen. See right there, out through the stylomastoid foramen. So I like it. It has 5 zillion branches. To the face. Wow, what a surprise. Facial nerve to the face. That other nerve coming off is called the Vestibulocochlear nerve. I'm going to introduce you to 2 structures. This is the cochlea. This is the vestibule. They're both part of the inner ear. And the vestibulocochlear nerve is going to go to them. So here's the cochlea, here's the vestibule. So it deals with hearing and balance. So that's the vestibulocochlear nerve. So real fast, olfactory, optic, oculomotor, hiding, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, vestibulocochlear. Our brainstem nerves are down here. This is our first one. That is the Glossopharyngeal. It goes to your throat and your tongue, or your underside of your oral cavity. And it is going to deal with a lot of different functions. So that's the Glossopharyngeal. Now in our models, the vagus and the accessory are right on top of each other. So on the brain model, it's going to be confusing. What I look for is the vagus nerve. Let's scroll out, is actually go all the way down here to the abdominal and thoracic cavity. This is my favorite cranial nerve. I tell physiology students always guess this nerve, and I always put it on tests. I like the vagus nerve. It's also the main parasympathetic nerve. So this is the most superior one. That is the Glossopharyngeal. We have the vagus, and we have then this thing. Notice it's coming off the spinal cord. Look at that. In the spine lecture, we're learning the spinal nerves are coming off the posterior and anterior roots and making the spinal nerve. This thing is coming off the lateral surface of the cervical spine, but because it has this one little branch coming off the brainstem, it's considered a cranial nerve. It's called the accessory nerve. Now this website's calling it the spinal accessory nerve. This is definitely the spinal accessory nerve. This is included in our nerves. It messes up our numbering system. If we don't include it, I have to include it. Accessory nerves number 11. But what probably happens, actually what does happen, is see how it's merging with the vagus right there? All the branches that are coming off the brainstem right there are actually going to leave with the vagus, where the branches that are coming off the spinal cord are going to go to the neck. So they're trying to get rid of this. They're not going to, but they are. Last but not least is the hypoglossal. So these 3 all exit through the jugular foramen. The hypoglossal goes out through the jugular canal, and it is going to go below the tongue, hypoglossal below tongue, and it is going to let you stick your tongue out at people and do other motor actions there. So it also hooks up with the cervical plexus, which is going to be in another lab. And this is just a really cool view of the cervical plexus. I made the cervical plexus video first. So those are the 12 cranial nerves. Again, I want you to tag them all, do the screen capture, upload, look at the rotating models, try to find it on them, then do the models. Cranial nerves are very important, definitely on your test. Thank you.